we really want to understand what's going on in space today and what's happening with the plan to put weapons in space, I think it's instructive to go back and understand the origins of the US space program. And to do that, you have to go back to Nazi Germany. Hitler recruited a brilliant young rocket scientist by the name of Wernher von Braun, who had a weekend rocket club, to come to work for the Nazis to build the V-1 and V-2 rockets that were used to terrorize the cities of London and Paris and Brussels towards the end of World War II. And for von Braun and his team, they set up along the Baltic Sea a place called Peenemünde. It was a research and development center for the Nazi rocket operation. And to this place at Peenemünde, the Nazis brought thousands of Jews and French resistance fighters to serve as prisoners, essentially slaves, to build this production effort. Well, the British found out about it, went in and bombed the entire operation. And so the Nazis said, we've got to move to a more secure location. And down inside of central Germany, there's a mountain chain called the Harz Mountains. And in that mountain, there's a huge tunnel where the Nazis were storing military hardware. Well, they cleared the whole thing out, moved the entire rocket operation into the tunnel, named it Mittelwerk. And just outside the mountain tunnel at Mittelwerk, the Nazis built a brand new concentration camp called Dora. And to Dora, the Nazis brought 40,000 Jews, gypsies, French resistance fighters, homosexuals, communists, even a black American GI were brought there to serve as slaves for the operation. Well, you know, immediately after the war, the US and the Allies created the Nuremberg trials, at which time we brought the Nazis to justice for their crimes against humanity. But 1,500 of the top Nazis never went to trial. They were smuggled into the United States by the US military under a program called Operation Paperclip, smuggled in through Boston and West Palm Beach, Florida. And Wernher von Braun and his rocket team, 100 of them, along with 100 copies of the V-2 rocket, were sent to Huntsville, Alabama, where von Braun became the first director of NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center. What's interesting is the other 1,400 Nazis. Who were they? Well, some of them were brought to the United States to work for the CIA. Others were brought to the United States to do the LSD drug experiments and the MK Ultra mind experiments during the 1960s, where people were jumping out of windows. Some of the Nazi scientists that in Germany had been taking Jews and putting them in freezing temperatures to see how the body would react to that were sent to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio and were put in charge of the US military flight medicine program. And so when you take 1,500 of the top Nazi scientists and essentially seed the military-industrial complex, the question I have is, do they bring with them an ideological contamination? Well, not only did von Braun go to work for NASA, but the guy that was in charge of the V-2 flight test program up at Peenemünde along the Baltic Sea, a guy by the name of Kurt Debus, became the first director of the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And then the man that recruited von Braun, Major General Walter Dornberger, the guy that was sent by Hitler to recruit von Braun to come to work for the Nazis, he became vice president of Bell Aerosystems Corporation in New York that made its riches building the helicopters for the war in Vietnam. In fact, when NASA was created, the US military freaked out. You're going to have a civilian space program? You can't do that. The military has to be in charge of space. Oh, don't worry, the military was told. From the first day, we're going to have a NASA oversight committee that ensures that the Pentagon controls the space program. And Major General Walter Dornberger, the Nazi that recruited von Braun, was appointed to that NASA oversight committee. In fact, in 1958, Dornberger testified before the United States Congress, saying that America's top space priority should be to, quote, conquer, occupy, keep, and utilize space between the Earth and the Moon. And in fact, later on, in a speech before a national missile industry conference, Dornberger told the assembled, "Gentlemen, I didn't come to this country to lose the Third World War. I lost 2 already." And so these are the essential origins of the U.S. space program. And so when we hear this slogan, Master of Space, that is on the building of the U.S. Space Command headquarters in Colorado Springs at Peterson Air Force Base, do we not find an ideological similarity between Master of Space and Hitler's slogan, Deutschland über alles, Germany over all?
1942, the war's on. Rick Abada, his hobby is sending these Navy operatives into Germany. They've been going all over Germany, and they're staggered at what they found. They found hundreds of different types of advanced weapons being built. These included 60-foot and 250-foot, 500-foot UFOs, round vehicles, okay, UFOs. They built some of these out of chromoly steel that would weigh tons and tons and tons. They had developed, or they had been given, electromagnetic anti-gravitational propulsion. They have all these UFOs, different types of propulsion that were unbelievable, laser weapon systems, unbelievable stuff. All over the country, Germany and the occupied areas, they had massive underground production facilities that they were using, they had developed for regular arms waste, like tanks and places to build Navy ships and all this kind of stuff. Most of it was underground. So they started expanding those facilities, and they put 11 of these UFO-shaped vehicles in production. So the operatives are trying to explain to us, and the admiral would back off and say, "Slow down, I don't believe you." And that went on, and then the captains would say the same thing. The operatives were nice guys, and they knew they were going to get the questions when they got back into the admiral's office, and they knew that nobody was going to believe what they said. So fortunately, the admiral had a typist in there, and the admiral's aide was not in there. He wasn't even cleared to be in there. And 1 or 2 of the captains, the admiral and myself, and we were the ones, the only people that this information was given to by the operatives. I want to step sort of back to my job in the Navy there, working for Admiral Rick Abada. We talked about my mission, not my job, my mission. It's documented, okay? It's written by the Secretary of the Navy, Forrestal, okay, who became the #1 guy in the military. Then he, like several other people, including our president at that time, were talking to a lot of other people. And so he was supposed to have had a mental breakdown, so they took him to the hospital there in Washington, at the top floor, and pushed him out the window. And so that's the guy that wrote Admiral Rick Abada's mission, which then my mission came from his. That was the level of this information in the United States. Now, no other country but Germany knew about the extraterrestrials. Nobody did. Now, as this started to unveil the reality of what Germany was doing, it was like the war is going to be over, period. They're going to take the whole planet, and they could do it in 5 minutes. 3 massive caverns. They let Germany use 2 small ones. But when you're talking about small, it's like as big as California. And so there's cities manufacturing everything that you would need on a planet. So then Hitler's group did the same thing. 4 years before the war was over, it was decided that the war could possibly be lost, but if we win it, we still need to get out of the area because the Allies are going to bomb us off of the earth and there won't be anything here left for us. So they decided to move everything to Antarctica. Admiral Byrd, they're going down there and they were going to take out the whole thing in 1 week. The top people in every area of the Navy, best aircraft, best ships, best weapons, everything. And 5 weeks later, things didn't look very good. When we got down there, they had decided they were going to have one thrust from the west side of Antarctica and then the opposite side coming into both of them towards the center of the continent. And so before we even got all the guys around, and I'm talking about big 4-engine flying boats, okay, and ships, battleships and destroyers and submarines and you name it. Before they got there, these fairly large, they were 100-foot diameter saucers, came up out of the ocean and took down everything. We lost that war.
You what, mate?
Flip.